on the CC. You can click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. We are recording, so this video will be available to watch again and or to share with other folks. Um, and you can use the chat feature if you have questions or comments for Dr. Swerdlow while he presents, and then I think he'll be able to answer some questions after his presentation. So with that being said, welcome again to our webinar, and I'm happy to have with us today Dr. Russell Swerdlow, who is, of course, the director of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at KU and a professor in the departments of neurology, cell biology, and anatomy, and biochemistry, and molecular biology. And he's also the director of the Neurodegenerative Disorders Program and the Heartland Center for Mitochondrial Medicine. Dr. Swerdlow's undergraduate and medical degrees are from New York University, and he trained as a neurologist and Alzheimer's specialist at the University of Virginia. He has a long list of awards, accomplishments, and commendations, and so I think you'll all agree with me that we are super lucky to have him at the KU ADRC, and super exciting to have him come and talk about the TDAD activities today. Dr. Swerdlow has more than 25 years of experience in this field, so we have a real expert in our midst. With that, Dr. Swerdlow, I will turn it over to you with my deep gratitude for your participation today.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and my deep gratification for that very nice introduction. Um, I have some slides that I could present about diet, nutrition, and brain health, but you know, I'll show you those slides if we sort of run into a lull here. I thought maybe what I would do to start out with, and maybe this will work great. Maybe this will fill half an hour, maybe not. Um, I wanted to start out by asking everyone here, um, what do you guys do to to keep a healthy diet? And how many of you are in making decisions about your diet and about what you eat based on considerations of brain health? I'm curious. I turned on the meeting chat, so usually I get to see these responses at the end of the talk after I presented stuff. But let's kind of turn this on its head. If people want to put in the chat, you know, what what they how considerations of brain health influence their diet. Okay, so one person um, does a Mediterranean diet, and so there's that's kind of a popular one for people who are interested in brain health. Okay, there's the Mind diet, so I can say a few words about the Mediterranean diet. I can say a few words about the Mind diet and blueberries. Okay, and then a ketogenic diet. Okay, all right. So, well, also, I'm sure more things will pop up on the chat, but let me start with these. So, that, you know, it's it's been reported that um, populations that eat a Mediterranean diet pattern um, may have lower rates of a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. It's kind of hard to do these studies or to come up with certain conclusions. The reason is that some populations that follow Mediterranean diets, for whatever reason, may have other things may impact why they have a lower Alzheimer's rate. For example, let's say people, in one of the blue zones, right, where people are more likely to live to 100. Maybe maybe they're eating a Mediterranean diet, but maybe they also have a common underlying genetic background. or or maybe their society is structured in such a way that they walk a lot and get a lot of exercise during the day. So, but the association was made primarily in initially in uh, European communities, and then there have been other studies that have asked outside of those geographies, do people who eat a Mediterranean diet, do they have a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's? And you know, from an epidemiologic perspective, if you just say, okay, here's someone on a Mediterranean diet, and here's someone who's not on a Mediterranean diet, and they're both 50 years old, and would you guess that one person's going to have a lower risk of developing Alzheimer's? And you might say that the person who's on the Mediterranean diet may have a very slightly lower risk of Alzheimer's, but yeah, there are issues of that we have to be um, cognizant of about what we call confounding, which is there could be other reasons. So, someone who eats a Mediterranean diet, um, eating some of the foods, and for someone who's eating a Mediterranean diet, may be more expensive, let's say, than someone who's not eating a Mediterranean diet. So we may really be picking out people who are more affluent or more educated, and these other factors have been associated with a decreased risk of developing Alzheimer's. So, the gold standard is always a clinical trial where you prospectively take a group of people and you put half of them on a Mediterranean diet and half of them on another diet, and you determine whether there's a one group does different than the other. And there was um, there was one study that came out, oh, I guess it's about 10, 15 years ago. It was in Spain where one of these prospective studies was done where people were either put on a Mediterranean diet or a non-Mediterranean diet, and uh, they found that those who were on the Mediterranean diet did seem to have a slightly lower risk of developing memory problems. But fortunately or unfortunately, for whatever, it is important to recognize that it was realized that there was something wrong with the study, and that the investigators really didn't randomize people. What they did was they took people who were already taking a Mediterranean diet and they assigned them to the Mediterranean diet group. And they took people who weren't on the Mediterranean diet and assigned them to the non-Mediterranean diet group. So there really wasn't true randomization. So this trial resolve really didn't resolve much. But the association is still there. And if people ask me or Dr. Burns or Dr. Townley or Dr. Pleen about what is there perhaps a dietary pattern that they can think of to try and ward off Alzheimer's? Maybe we'll tell them, well, there is some data about a Mediterranean diet, but I think you understand some of the pros and cons of the argument now. I think the in terms of the mind diet, uh, how did that? Well, I should say, what is a Mediterranean diet? A Mediterranean diet is it's lower on red meat, and it's higher on fruits and vegetables and a lot of and olive oil and things like that. Um, Usually there's a lot of fish in the diet. Now there's another diet that other people have had developed an interest in terms of whether it could benefit or lower Alzheimer's risk or not. And that diet was a diet called the DASH diet. DASH is an acronym. I can't remember what it stands for exactly, but the DASH diet is a diet that physicians would prescribe to patients to try and help with their blood pressure. it's kind of a low sodium diet. And investigators, were, there have been studies done with this DASH diet to try and lower blood pressure. And some of these studies that were done, that were looking at heart health, also acquired some data on cognitive test performance. And in those studies, they said, hey, it looks like people who are doing a DASH diet um, may have may be doing better cognitively. And so that led to speculation that maybe this DASH diet might be good for cognition. And then there was a group of Alzheimer's scientists at Washington University in St. Louis, and they said, "Hey, you know what? I wonder if we can create a diet, um, which is like a hybrid of a Mediterranean diet and a DASH diet. Let's try to combine both those diets." And and they uh, so they created a diet called the Mind diet. Mind. I'll put up a slide in a few moments that so you can see what these acronyms stand for. But the idea was to create a diet that kind of combined the DASH and the Mediterranean, and that's the Mind diet. And so what happens with these different diets when people start getting interested in them in terms of Alzheimer's is usually there are small studies and people say, yeah, this is a small study. It looks like maybe there could be a benefit. And then, that may lead to larger studies. The With the Mind diet, there was just a large study that was published um, that was looking at its effect great dietary approaches to stop hypertension. Thank you for that, Kelly. So the and that Mind diet study was actually a negative study. So um, people, have raised criticisms about the study about was it really sensitive enough to show if there were differences. So, one thing I've learned as a scientist is it could be very difficult to prove a negative. You know, but that's kind of what we know about the Mediterranean and DASH and Mind diets. There's hope and some promise, but it's not definitive yet. Okay, so and then there's another diet which is a kind of a very different kind of diet called a ketogenic diet. And a ketogenic diet is a very it's a very low carbohydrate diet. Well, if you're not eating, if you cut down on your carbohydrates, um, what do you substitute those calories with? Well, you can add protein onto the diet. If you eat a low carb diet and you add protein to make up for it, that's kind of that diet has a name. It's called an Atkins diet. Um, what happens if you lower your carbohydrates and you make up for the calories with by increasing the amount of fat that you consume? That's called a ketogenic diet. And there are some important things that distinguish a low carb diet in which you increase your fat intake versus a low carb diet in which you increase your protein intake. And the main difference is that if you if you boost the fat, your body starts to do something called ketosis, meaning that it takes the fat in the body and it starts to break down the fat for energy. If you if you supplement with protein and you boost your protein, that doesn't happen. Your body just starts metabolizing the protein that you've given it. So that's a very important difference. Now, could there be advantages to having ketosis, to breaking down fats for energy? And the answer is yes. And really, you know, people in the medical field first started to get wind of this thousands of years ago. And you're asking me, wow, that seems like a long time ago. How did they get wind of that? Well, here's the story. Um, 3,000 years ago, um, there were still people who had epilepsy and had seizures. And the feeling was that people that seizures were demonic possession. And so it was demonic possession that caused the seizures. And one of the therapies that people considered to try and treat this demonic possession was to starve the patient. So, um, figure if you starve the patient, then the demon will have nothing to eat and get hungry and go and possess someone else. So, strangely enough, that seemed to work. Um, they would fast people who had seizures, and then they would stop seizing. And in retrospect, what was happening was when people were fasting, it was forcing them to start breaking down their fats and doing this ketosis and making these ketone bodies. And for whatever reason, that was associated with not seizing. So so fasting became an accepted treatment to treat seizures with, but it's unpleasant to be fasting all the time. Um, in the early 20th century, there was a there were physicians who started to realize that if you if you if you fast but give fat, people don't get hungry. So it really made it easier to fast because you can do the fasting without the hunger. And so so that seemed to work for seizures as well. Now, because people were not eating carbs and they were eating fat, they were going into ketosis. And it was actually a rather popular and effective way to treat seizures for several decades until the medical field began to develop good anti-seizure medicines. Um, the, the need to use a ketogenic diet to treat epilepsy became much less in the second half of the 20th century. But we still will use it today occasionally to treat refractory seizures that don't respond to medications. But but this ketogenic diet, it sounds like it might be very unhealthy, but when 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 done in certain ways, it it really it really doesn't have to be. It can actually be quite healthy. Um, it can actually lower inflammation. Um, it People can actually lose weight on the diet because they they're breaking down their fats. They're living off their fat and they're burning their fat. Why don't why doesn't the fat that they eat end up replacing that fat that they're burning? And the reason is that in order to store your fat, you need to be the body needs to be expressing insulin. The pancreas needs to be releasing insulin into the bloodstream. But it's the carbohydrates that make you release insulin into the bloodstream. So when you lower the carbs and eat the fat, you're not your insulin levels are remaining very low. And and for that reason, the fat that you're eating is getting burned rather than getting stashed away and stored. So it's actually a diet that people will use to lose weight. Interestingly enough, and okay, so let's see here. We have started to investigate changing our diet here. I've checked out some cookbooks from the okay, so certainly it sounds like there is interest in using diet for brain health. Eating less beef. Well, eating less beef is part of a it's part of a Mediterranean diet and therefore a mind diet. Um, you can still eat beef on a on a ketogenic diet. You wouldn't want to eat the beef, let's say, on a bun. Like you wouldn't want to you have to eat a cheeseburger without the bun. Um, so and then I eat vegetables, fruit, chicken, and fish. Yes, all all very wise items that you would see on a Mediterranean diet. So, are there values to eating a particular nutrient like a vegetable or fruit? I skipped over something here. Eat more blueberries. Yes. So, yeah, scientists have spent a lot of time looking at individual uh, dietary components to see whether they might facilitate brain health. And one thing that people have asked about is, or have reported about, is the potential of blueberries. And where that came from was that blueberries are particularly high in certain antioxidants. And there was a hypothesis from several decades ago that something called oxidative stress or free radicals may may be bad for the brain, and that maybe if we had a diets that had more antioxidants in them, that that they might that might be beneficial. So people have looked at particular specific foods like blueberries just for those specific reasons. Um, and that's why you start to get this some confusion in the literature about well, can you eat the fruit or can you eat a vegetable? Or not but of supplement vitamins that may capture what's what you're trying to get from the fruit or the vegetable. And so so some of these studies that have been done on an epidemiologic basis have found that, yeah, when you eat maybe a lot of blueberries or a lot of berries, maybe that your memory does better versus, but we don't see that in people who are taking multivitamins. And my point on, I guess, what I would say about that is that you know it's hard to know what's right. There have been actually some studies recently in which people taking a multivitamin, older people taking a multivitamin, seem to have a slightly lower chance of of losing ground on cognitive testing over a 2 year period than those who didn't take the multivitamin. So I guess the big picture for me is maybe some of these things have the potential to help a little bit, but I'm not sure that these changes are transformative. Um, avocados avocados are an interesting food item. People think about them as kind of like the miracle food. Um, they're a fruit, or I think that they're a fruit that kind of acts like a vegetable, and it's a fruit that has a lot of oil in it. So it's a fruit that people can eat on a ketogenic diet because it can it won't wreck the ketosis. So so there's some unique things that an avocado allows you to do. Is there even an ethical way to do a controlled study of these diets? Uh, yeah, I would argue yes, as long as people know what they're getting into. Um, if there's a chance that we certainly don't want to do any harm to people, and so we'd like to think if we're enrolling them in our studies that we're making sure that we're minimizing any potential harms, and people know what they're getting into, and then we're asking the question, could these diets potentially help someone? And so, and then it becomes the choice of the participant about whether they want to enter into the study or not. Okay. Yes. So, trying to eat healthier fruits, veggies, and few carbs as possible. Quite a challenge. Yeah, it can be. Um, I got to tell you, I'll just tell you a funny story. For her New Year's resolution, my wife decided that she wanted to go vegetarian, and so now I find when I eat out, I have to make sure I eat a burger so I can get my fix. I didn't think she would stick to it as long as she has, but I don't know. it's looking like she might be settling in. What about intermittent fasting? Yeah, so yeah, intermittent fasting may accomplish some of the factors that a ketogenic diet does. Um, you know, do you it may put you into ketosis for a particular part of the day. Um, so there are times when I've done intermittent fasting to try to lose weight. Um, I can keep it up for a certain amount of time. There is a study where people have looked at a variant of intermittent fasting, which is just caloric restriction. And in that study of caloric restriction, it looked like people who are on a calorically restricted diet um, actually showed improvements in cognition. Um, I don't know if it was it really benefiting cognition? If it was it because these people were in ketosis? Because that can happen with caloric restriction. And the other possibility too, I suppose, is that the people who are in caloric restriction were just much more awake because they were out or thinking about they were up and looking for food, but because they were hungry. So yeah, which I guess so. These are all. Thanks for sending me all these points. So which brings me to the TDAD study, Therapeutic Diets in Alzheimer's Disease. So the TDAD study is we're comparing two different diets, or we call them dietary patterns, really, to see if they could potentially benefit cognition in people. It's a relatively short study. People who matriculate into this study, they're only really on the diet for 3 months. We randomize them to one of two diets, a heart healthy diet, which is kind of, not too far off from a Mediterranean diet, and or to a ketogenic diet where we're trying to, you know, change the fuel that the brain sees. Um, so we're really trying to address two important questions. Some have proposed that what's good for the heart is good for the brain, and so a heart healthy diet, um, how much can that maybe benefit cognition in people? And then the ketogenic diet, uh, the rationale behind that is a bit different. It's, we know that there are problems with energy utilization in the brains of Alzheimer's patients. So we're trying to put a different fuel in the tank, namely ketone bodies. So we want to be able to compare um, these two dietary patterns. And because the time on the diet is only for 3 months, it's not enough time to really see, are we slowing decline? Really, what we're looking for here is, are we improving people? So, so people in this study, if they want to join the study, they we do a couple of simple tests just to make sure that they're healthy enough for these diets. Again, minimize the chances of any harm. And if people who and we tell them what we're trying to do, and if people want to be in the study, then we randomize them to one of the two diets. And after 3 months, we see how they're doing. Um, and during the study, we do some special studies on our end to try and figure out exactly how these diets are changing people's physiology. Okay, so we want to look at how these diets are changing insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance. We want to see how these diets are affecting markers of inflammation. We want to see how these diets are affecting mitochondrial function. And we want to see uh, yeah, is are we changing things like cholesterol and things like ApoE and in people. Now, I did see one question that's someone tried a keto diet, but the cholesterol went up. We we occasionally do see that. There are ways to get around that by modifying the ketogenic diet. In other words, um, if someone may be eating a particular ketogenic pattern and their cholesterol may go up, um, and that can perhaps be addressed by modifications in the diet. Also, one thing that we've seen is that in some people, the negative cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol may go up, but we also see the good cholesterol, the HDL, also go up as well. So, so there are um, lots of things to be considered here. Let me see it. Let me share my screen here. I think you may enjoy seeing this, and then maybe we can wrap up, or I'll wrap up. So this is kind of what the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, and the MIND diet look like. And Kelly, maybe I can send you this slide, and whoops, and if anyone wants it, they can we can send it on to them. It talks about what's the overall 30,000 foot view of what the diet's trying to do, and what are the recommended foods, what you're not supposed to eat during the diet. So, wow, that was a quick half hour. You guys are good. So, any other questions for me that I can make? I'm happy to stay a few minutes late, a few minutes beyond, and answer some questions. But if anyone wants to drop off, I'm very respectful of your time.
Dr.
Yeah,
Swerdlow,
thanks for listening.
yeah, I got a question from someone in the chat who asked if you would speak to the benefits of being part of TDAD, for example, direct access to a dietitian.
Oh, yeah. So, well, one of the real beauties of this study is whatever diet you end up randomized to, you're going to learn a lot about healthy eating. And we we have a fantastic um, dietitian, Jessica Keller, um, and she's not only an expert, she's very nice too. She doesn't smile. There she goes. She doesn't smile much, um, but yeah, everyone who's in this study learns a lot about diet, and also too, we we recognize that being on some of these diets, it may be a little more. It may not be any more expensive or any different in cost than whatever diet you're already eating, but just in case it ends up being more, we provide a monthly stipend to offset the cost of groceries. So, and for people who are interested in the study and maybe they're coming from from more than a long drive, more than 2 hours from here, we also offer a night. We'll also pay for hotel accommodations, so that you don't have to drive too much in a 24-hour period. So, um, and so there's a lot to potentially be learned. Jess, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sure. I kind of just can everyone hear me?
Hmm.
I went ahead and just shared my screen, just talking about some of the perks of participation. So we always talk about, in terms of research participation, you all are amazing. The science can't move forward without research participants. So that to begin with is amazing. You're all amazing. Thank you for being here. But that being said, um, you're never going to be on follow a diet or follow one of these eating patterns with more help unless you're dishing out buku bucks to go somewhere and get this help. So here in the big bold on this slide, you've got 24/7 access to me. Obviously, I'm a bit more responsive at certain times of the day, but I'm happy to work with everyone. Obviously, we have some minimum requirements about check-ins. We do weekly phone check-ins for the first 6 weeks. That shifts to every other week for the last 6 weeks, and that's a minimum. I'll say I talk to a lot of our people far more often than that. It could be just checking in. I'm at a restaurant and, is this, let me read you this entree. Does it sound keto? Or, a recommendation for what to buy at the grocery store, just little things like that. So a lot of support there. And then, of course, the bigger conversations about nutrition in general. But in terms of research beyond dietary or nutrition research, you're always going to get that extra time with clinicians. We always call it kind of an extension of care. And that's you're going to get testing done. You're going to get more visibility to those clinicians that you wouldn't get in your normal standard of care. We also give out the education materials that are very thorough for both diets. So whichever one you're assigned to, if you're still interested in that other diet at the end of the study, we'll provide those education materials to you as well. And that includes shopping lists, tips and tricks for dining out, lots and lots of recipes, sample food menus. So those are really thorough materials that you can use for a long time to come. And then Dr. Swerdlow, of course, mentions the compensation. Everybody's time is valuable, and we can certainly respect that. For those people who live out of town, it is 1 hour. So if you're just outside the metro, we'll still help out. We want to get people in from all areas as long, we don't want the financial burden to be the barrier there. So lots of benefits. It's like I always tell people, it's an adventure. We have to make a change to see a change. You've got a lot of support, and I like to try and spin it to where we have a little bit of fun too. So that's my big shameless plug there.
And probably some of you are thinking, hey, Russ, we've heard about, you guys have been telling us about this diet for a couple of years now. Why is this study still going on? And the answer is, well, we're getting close. So our target was to get 80 people into the study, and we've gotten about 60 people so far. So we've been getting about 2 people a month for the last for the last 6 or 8 months, thanks to Tina, if she's still there. I don't know if she left, but we've been getting about 2 people a month. So we hope by early 2025 to have our final participants matriculated into the study. And if this is in fact the case, we'll have a full body of results to analyze, and hopefully those results will be analyzed by the end of 2025.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Swerdlow. Thank you, everybody. I put in the chat, so I'll leave it up for a bit, the link to fill out the study form for the TDAD study. Or if it's easier, you can call the number 913-588-0555 and press 1 and talk to our recruitment team about what's going on, whether the keto diet or the TDAD study or any one of a number of other studies that we are doing. And to the person who just chatted to me, yes, call that number to participate in any of our research studies. And then Anne, I hope you saw in the chat, Dr. Swerdlow, Anne asked about a legitimate resource for keto other than the studies. So shameless plug, I recommended LEAP as a good source of reliable information. I don't know if you or Dr. Keller have anything beyond that to share. You're welcome to.
I'll go ahead. I will input my email into the chat. Any of you can feel free to reach out to me directly, and we can kind of chat about what resources you're looking for in that regard.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Dr. Swerdlow, I've gotten a few requests for please send your slide that you showed briefly about the comparison of the diets. So if you would email that to me, I'll be happy to make it available to the My Alliance folks. Anybody who might want that, send an email to myalliance@kumc.edu. And I'll probably put something in the next My Alliance newsletter in case you didn't remember that. So you'll be able to have access to that. Dr. Swerdlow, thank you as always for sharing your expertise. I think everybody, if they haven't planned their dinner menu for tonight, has some great ideas for what to shop for and what to prepare. And I know I learned today that any New Year's resolution you make also applies to everybody else in your house. So everybody think about that as you make maybe your mid-year resolutions and any plans you want to get everybody on board to good brain health. So I think we'll stop there for today. Next week, we're going to have the team from our NeuroWalk study, which is about moving. They'll be on with us to talk about how you can participate in NeuroWalk. So stay tuned for more information about that. Again, thank you all for being here, and we'll see you in April on That'll be a good day. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.